Good morning, and welcome to Karma Stories. Wishing you a day full of peace, truth, and just enough karma to keep things interesting. Stay with us for real tales where justice always finds its way. The enforced tranquility hit me like a ton of artisanal, locally sourced bricks. I'd been gone 3 days. 3 days on a soul-crushing business trip to Cleveland, dreaming of my own damn couch and a beer that didn't taste like regret. Instead, I pulled into my driveway. It wasn't my backyard anymore. It looked like a New Age cult had crash-landed and decided to set up shop. A perfectly circular, rock-lined pond now dominated the space where my slightly overgrown, but beloved, patch of grass used to be. Clumps of bamboo, looking suspiciously like they'd been yanked from a garden center clearance rack, were strategically, if aggressively, placed wind chimes. So many wind chimes. Each one a tinny promise of future migraines, dangled from every available surface. Solar-powered lights, the cheap kind, were stabbed into the earth around what I could only assume was the energy perimeter, because, of course, a path of glaringly white gravel, the kind that gets stuck in your shoe treads and then tracked all over your clean floors, bisected the new water feature. It led to a centerpiece that made my teeth ache, a 4-foot-tall ceramic Buddha, smirking with the kind of serenity only someone who doesn't pay property taxes can achieve. Beside it, a professionally routed wooden sign declared in offensively cheerful script, Pineview Community Meditation Zone. For contributing HOA members only. My jaw, already somewhere around my knees, dropped further, tucked discreetly, or so they thought, in the corner, near where my prize-winning participant ribbon-winning rose bushes once stood, was a locked steel drop box. Another sign, smaller but no less infuriating, read, suggested monthly contribution, $85, Venmo, or cash accepted. For a wild, fleeting moment, I wondered if I'd pulled into the wrong cul-de-sac, if 3 days of PowerPoint presentations had finally broken my brain. But no, that was my slightly crooked mailbox, the one I kept meaning to fix. This was my house, and my backyard had been the victim of a hostile Zen takeover. There were no barricades, no leftover construction debris. They were annoyingly neat, I'll give them that, and certainly no pardon our dust. Notice that might have hinted at this landscape lunacy. Most importantly, there was no shred of evidence that I, the actual owner of said land, had ever agreed to turn my private property into a public access, pay-to-play sanctuary. My fingers fumbled for my phone, already dialing the number I knew by heart, the one that induced a Pavlovian clenching in my gut. Karen Whitaker, HOA president, queen of the quibblers, duchess of driveway decrees. She answered on the second ring, her voice as smooth and unyielding as polished granite. Pineview HOA, Karen speaking. How may I facilitate your community harmony today? The saccharine sweetness was enough to give a diabetic a coma. Karen, it's Sarah Jenkins from number 12. You might want to facilitate an explanation for why my backyard looks like a budget theme park dedicated to inner peace. A beat of silence, not a surprised silence. Mind you, more like the silence of a predator recalculating its attack angle. Miss Jenkins, yes, you're referring to Phase 2 of the Spiritual Oasis Initiative, I presume. The what now? I could feel a vein throbbing in my temple. Karen, there's a Buddha in my birdbath's former location. It's a beautifully crafted representation, isn't it? She purred. The expanded council voted it through. 5-9, a clear majority. Council. Karen, I didn't vote. I wasn't even asked. There's not a single signature from me, the person who actually owns the land, authorizing this invasion. My voice was rising, but I was past caring. Well, Boss Jenkins, she said, her tone dripping with condescension. As per Bylaw 8B, subsection C, community harmony and proactive assent. When resident silence in the face of proposed enhancements is interpreted as positive consent, we find it fosters a more cohesive environment when we streamline the approval process. Community harmony is paramount. After all, streamline. You mean steamroll. You're telling me if I don't actively scream no to every harebrained idea you people cook up, you take that as a yes to commandeer my property. It's for the betterment of Pineview. Mrs. Jenkins, think of the collective chi. I hung up before I said something that could get me hauled before a real counsel. My hands were shaking. I stomped inside, snatched the thick folder containing my house deeds and plot map, and spread them across the kitchen counter. The lines were clear, unequivocal. The new meditation zone, every last pebble and bamboo shoot of it, was planted squarely, undeniably, on my private property. Not an inch of it bled over into common land. This wasn't an oopsie, a slight miscalculation of boundaries. This was a land grab, pure and simple, dressed up in cheap spiritualism. Later that afternoon, while I was meticulously documenting every inch of the unwanted Zenification with my phone camera, my neighbor, Mr. Levin from across the street, shuffled over. He's a quiet man, always tending his meticulously manicured petunias. He glanced nervously towards Karen's house, a beige monolith at the end of the cul-de-sac. Before leaning in, "They did it to us too, you know?" he whispered, his voice barely audible above the infernal clanging of the nearest wind chime. About 1.5 feet of our side yard. Said it was for feng shui realignment for the community entrance. We didn't say anything. Karen, well, she can make things difficult. He looked down at his shoes. The picture of defeated resignation. Difficult. The woman was a suburban warlord in Lululemon. A cold fury, sharp and clear, began to solidify in my chest. This wasn't just about a stolen backyard or an unwanted Buddha. This was about boundaries, about respect, about not letting some self-appointed guru of the greenbelts dictate my life or my landscape. Through sheer audacity and weaponized bylaws, I zoomed in on the contributions box, then on the smirking Buddha, then on the sign that so cheerfully invited strangers onto my land for a fee. No less. Oh, this wasn't an accident. This was a calculated campaign of encroachment, a test of wills, and Karen Whitaker was about to find out that my positive consent had just been revoked. Permanently and with extreme prejudice, my silence was over. It was time to make some noise. This so-called spiritual oasis was about to become a war zone, and I had a feeling my chi was going to be anything but aligned. My spiritual oasis had rapidly devolved from a mere eyesore into the epicenter of my own personal Cold War. The Buddha still smirked. The wind chimes still clanged their siren song of suburban despair. But now, every time I looked at them, I didn't just see bad taste. I saw a battle plan. Karen Whitaker thought her positive consent clause was a loophole. She was about to find out it was a noose, and I was happy to provide the rope. The first order of business was that locked steel donations box, $85 a month. For this, in a neighborhood where people argued for 20 minutes on the community Facebook page about whether the annual dues should go up by $10. Something stank worse than the stagnant water already starting to gather in that ridiculous pond. It wasn't hard to get some of the neighbors talking. Once they realized I wasn't just going to roll over and play dead like a possum in Karen's headlights. A few hushed conversations over meticulously trimmed hedges. A couple of accidental run-ins at the mailbox. And the numbers started to paint a very ugly picture. Turns out, Karen and her expanded council, which I was discovering was mostly just her and a few sycophants who probably got preferential treatment on Lawn of the Month judging, had been hitting people up for these voluntary contributions for weeks. 27 households, according to Brenda from 2 doors down, who kept a mental ledger of everything that happened on our street, had coughed up cash. $16,000. $16,000 for this pile of rocks and cheap bamboo. The phrase slush fund practically screamed itself into my brain. She said it was for beautification and enhanced spiritual vibrations. Mark, a usually stoic engineer from across the street, confessed, looking embarrassed. My wife's into that stuff. I just paid it to keep the peace. The universal lament of the HOA oppressed. Next stop, City Hall. I spent a delightful morning navigating the labyrinthine bureaucracy of the permits department, a place where joy went to die under fluorescent lights. The clerk, a woman whose expression suggested she'd seen it all and was impressed by none of it, typed in my address, then Karen's, then the HOA's official designation. She squinted at her screen. Nope, no permits pulled for any new construction, landscaping over a certain square footage, or water feature installation at that address, or for the Pineview HOA common areas. In the last 2 years, she looked up at me. Someone build an unpermitted Zen garden on your lawn. Hun, Her deadpan delivery was Oscar-worthy. Something like that, I said, the grin spreading across my face, feeling genuinely predatory. No permits. Of course. Karen probably thought permits were for little people. Then came the emails. A disgruntled HOA board member who'd clearly had enough of Karen's reign of terror and perhaps felt a twinge of guilt, or maybe just saw an opportunity to stick it to the queen bee, anonymously forwarded me a chain of messages. Karen, in her infinite wisdom, hadn't used the official HOA communication channels. Oh no. These were from her personal email, gushing about the upcoming Pineview Green Energy Pond, a title that never once appeared in any official HOA minutes or financial reports I'd subsequently demanded copies of. The budget was a black hole where this oasis was concerned. She was marketing it like her own private wellness retreat. And the construction company? Celestial Landscapes, LLC. A quick online search revealed it was registered to one Chad Whitaker, Karen's nephew, the same Chad who, according to his very public social media, had previously specialized in power washing driveways and occasionally aspirational DJing. His company had no listed contractor's license. And the invoices, the beautifully itemized invoices another mole managed to slip me, showed prices for rocks, bamboo, and that damn ceramic Buddha that were easily 3 to 4 times market value. My blood pressure was rivaling the national debt. This wasn't just an overreach, this was straight up gold-plated grifting. De pièces de résistance, however, the cherry on top of this crap sundae, came during one of my late-night reconnaissance missions. Armed with a high-powered flashlight and a growing sense of righteous fury, I was examining the smug Buddha more closely. There was something odd about its serene gaze, a slight asymmetry in one of its ceramic eyes. I leaned closer, angling the flashlight, and there it was, a tiny, almost invisible lens, nestled right in the tear duct, a goddamn hidden camera, pointed directly at my back door, my kitchen window, my private life, spied on by a 4-foot enlightened peeping Tom. The rage that surged through me was so potent, it was almost a physical force. This had crossed a line from infuriating and illegal to deeply, personally violating. This wasn't about community harmony. This was about control, intimidation, and voyeurism, all wrapped up in a Zen package. As if that wasn't enough, the meditation zone had spawned a side hustle. A small, tastefully weathered table appeared next to the Buddha one morning, laden with what Karen was calling essential Zen accessories. Overpriced candles infused with healing crystals that looked suspiciously like gravel from my driveway. Frequency-aligning beaded bracelets that probably came from a craft store bargain bin. And tiny bags of detoxifying serenity tea that smelled faintly of lawn clippings. The kicker. You were heavily encouraged to buy a starter tranquility combo pack. The pressure was subtle, couched in new agey wellness babble. But it was there. Donate. Then accessorize. I felt like an investigative journalist. Only my Watergate was a badly constructed water feature, and my deep throat was a series of pissed-off neighbors and disgruntled board members too scared to speak up publicly. I started filming everything. The comings and goings, the hushed money exchanges disguised as friendly chats by the donations box, Chad Whitaker's unlicensed crew trampling my remaining flower beds while delivering more overpriced rocks. I took screenshots of the emails, downloaded the invoices, and cross-referenced every single violation with my property deeds and the HOA's original non-Karen corrupted bylaws. The file was getting thick. This sacred Zen project wasn't sacred at all. It was a cash cow, a nepotism scheme, and a surveillance state, all rolled into one infuriatingly beige package. Karen hadn't just built a pond, she'd built her own little fiefdom, funded by fear and apathy. My internal monologue was now a constant stream of legal strategy and sarcastic takedowns. Your Honor, Exhibit the defendant, Karen Whitaker, clearly believes is spelled M-O-N-E-Y, or, yes, officer. The Buddha saw everything. We're hoping he'll turn state's witness. The fight was no longer just about getting my yard back. It was about dismantling Karen's entire crooked empire. One faux spiritual, overpriced wind chime at a time. And I was just getting started. The community meditation zone was about to experience a very un-Zen-like disturbance. All right. The evidence was piling up faster than junk mail in January. My little backyard Buddha-gate was morphing into a full-blown exposé of corruption, nepotism, and surveillance. It was time to move from covert ops to overt action. If Karen wanted a war over my patch of crabgrass, she was about to get one. My first volley was decidedly low-tech but satisfyingly direct. A fence. Not some flimsy garden border, but a sturdy, 6-foot-tall, undeniably keep the hell out wooden privacy fence, professionally installed, smack dab on my property line, effectively bisecting her precious community meditation zone. The donation box and half the bamboo ended up on my side, the smirking Buddha and his rip-off accessory table on the other, now looking forlornly at an impassable barrier. It was a beautiful sight. My backyard was mine again, albeit with a lingering aroma of patchouli and cheap incense. The official HOA letter arrived within 24 hours, hand-delivered by one of Karen's stone-faced acolytes. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive legalese. "Dear Miss Jenkins," it began, "it has come to our attention that an unapproved structure has been erected, thereby disrupting the carefully calibrated energy flow of the Pineview Community Meditation Zone. This unilateral action is in direct violation of the spirit, if not the explicit letter, of Bylaw 12G. Preservation of communal aesthetic harmonics." "Communally aesthetic harmonics?" I muttered, crumpling the letter. "Is that what we're calling trespassing and extortion these days?" The audacity was breathtaking. My fence was disrupting their energy flow on my land. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. Karen, however, wasn't one to be deterred by something as trivial as a legally constructed barrier on private property. A few days later, I came home from a grocery run to find a full-blown spectacle unfolding on the other side of my new fence. In the now diminished public half of the Zen Zone, a crowd of about 30 people, mostly unfamiliar faces, were gathered. In the center, a young woman with impossibly blonde hair, flowing white garments, and an alarming number of crystals draped around her neck was waving her arms dramatically. This, apparently, was Mystic Moonflower, a self-proclaimed spiritual TikToker with a modest but fervent following, here to activate the Pineview frequency field. There was a folding table near the entrance to what remained of the zone, where one of Karen's lieutenants was cheerfully collecting a $50 entrance fee. $50 to watch a wannabe Stevie Nicks do interpretive dance around a ceramic Buddha on a patch of common ground not much bigger than a queen-sized mattress. The rage was a slow burn, starting in my gut and rising. This wasn't about Zen anymore. It was about brazen profiteering, turning our neighborhood into a sideshow. I saw Greg, a retired accountant who'd been quietly grumbling about Karen's financial irregularities for months, filming the proceedings on his phone from the edge of the crowd. As he turned to leave, a burly guy in a Zen Zone security t-shirt, a new and unwelcome addition, accidentally bumped into him. Hard. Greg, who was in his late 60s, stumbled and went down, his phone skittering across the pavement. I rushed over. "Greg, are you okay?" He was shaken, his glasses askew. "I think so. Just a bit of a shock." The security guy loomed. "Watch where you're going, old man." Karen, materializing as if summoned by the scent of conflict, glided over, her face a mask of concern so fake it could have its own reality TV show. "Oh, dear, are you all right?" "Gregory, such a shame. Sometimes, when the energies are particularly potent, these little accidents can happen. A slight vibrational misalignment. Perhaps vibrational misalignment," I snapped, helping Greg up. "That was assault, Karen. Your goon pushed him." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Such inflammatory language? Miss Jenkins, we're all about peace and positive energy here." She then turned to the crowd. "Nothing to worry about, folks. Just a minor energetic wobble. Mystic Moonflower, please continue to elevate our collective consciousness." The sheer, unadulterated gall was stunning. She was gaslighting an entire crowd. The next escalation came a few nights later. A sharp, authoritative knock on my door. I opened it to find two individuals in what looked like police uniforms. Dark blue, badges, utility belts, the whole 9 yards. "Ma'am?" the taller one said, his voice deep and devoid of any warmth. "We've had several complaints about your disruptive behavior concerning the Homeowners Association." My blood ran cold for a second. Had Karen actually managed to weaponize the local PD? Disruptive behavior. I erected a fence on my own property. The HOA regulations are clear. The second one chimed in, his hand resting near what looked like a holstered weapon. You need to cease and desist from interfering with HOA projects and community activities. Consider this your official warning. Something felt off. Their uniforms were too crisp, too generic. The badges didn't have any municipal insignia I recognized. What precinct are you from? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. And can I see your badge numbers? Officers. The taller one's eyes flickered. We're with a special community liaison unit. Ma'am, just take the advice. It'll be better for everyone. They turned and walked away. Not towards a marked police cruiser, but to an unmarked black sedan parked down the street. My heart was hammering. That wasn't police. That was private security. Hired muscle dressed up to intimidate. Karen was playing seriously dirty now. The spiritual oasis had officially entered its jackbooted thug phase. The following morning, my phone rang. Caller ID blocked. Miss Jenkins, a calm, official-sounding male voice. Yes? Who is this? This is Officer Miller with the Pineview Police Department. We've been made aware of some ongoing friction between you and the Pineview HOA. This time, it sounded legit. He even gave a badge number when I asked. Officer, I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. The HOA has illegally constructed a facility on my private property. They're running an unpermitted commercial enterprise, and now they're sending fake cops to my door to intimidate me. I'm the one being harassed. There was a pause. Missy Jenkins, I'm not here to take sides, but I will say that continued disputes that require police intervention, well, it can lead to a record of non-cooperation for residents. It's generally better for everyone if these community matters can be resolved amicably. His tone was polite, almost regretful, but the underlying message was clear. Stop making waves, or we'll make official waves for you. So, Karen had friends, or at least influence, with the actual police too. Enough to get them to make vaguely threatening phone calls on her behalf. I hung up, a cold knot of anger and, yes, a little fear tightening in my stomach. This woman was drunk on power, turning our quiet suburban enclave into her personal fiefdom, enforced by fake cops and whispered threats from real ones. The shift from Zen meditation to outright oppression had been swift and brutal. But if Karen Whitaker thought a few strong-arm tactics and a veiled warning from the local PD were going to make me back down, she'd seriously underestimated how much I hated that damn Buddha and everything it now stood for. This wasn't just about my backyard anymore. This was about principle. The more she pushed, the harder I was going to push back. My Zen was now officially a declaration of war. What did you think of today's story? If it made your day, drop a good in the comments. If it didn't hit the mark, just type 1. Got your own thoughts? I'd love to hear them below. And hey, don't forget to hit subscribe. It's free, and it really helps the channel grow. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so Karen Whitaker thought she was untouchable. A suburban empress ruling her little kingdom of beige houses and manicured lawns, with an iron fist clad in a Lululemon glove. She had her expanded council of bobbleheads, her rent-a-thugs in fake police uniforms, and apparently, a get-out-of-jail-free card courtesy of the actual local constabulary. What she didn't count on was that her spiritual oasis had inadvertently awakened my inner bulldog, and I had a serious bone to pick. That vague threat from Officer Miller. It wasn't a deterrent. It was a freaking roadmap. If the cops weren't going to help, it meant someone inside was helping Karen. The fake cops were one thing. The real cop's call was a flashing neon sign pointing to something rotten deeper within the system. My late-night internet sleuthing sessions, previously dedicated to finding the best deals on bulk coffee, now had a new target. The Pineview power structure. It didn't take long to hit pay dirt. A little digging through county employee databases. Cross-referencing with social media photos from past HOA community spirit barbecues gagged me with a spiritually aligned spoon. And there he was, Deputy Sheriff Michael Mikey Whitaker, Karen's not-so-little brother, grinning beside her at the grill, spatula in one hand, what looked suspiciously like a confiscated beer in the other. The family resemblance was unmistakable, mostly around the smug set of the jaw. Suddenly, Officer Miller's friendly advice and the disappearing complaints made a whole lot more sense. I started reaching out to other residents, the ones who'd whispered their grievances but had been too scared to shout. It turned out several of them had filed formal complaints with the Pineview PD about Karen's strong-arm tactics, the unpermitted construction, even the dubious donations, and every single one of those complaints vanished. Poof! No follow-up. No record in the online portal. Just gone. Like they'd been absorbed into the same bureaucratic black hole as Karen's HOA budget for the green energy pond. This wasn't just an HOA problem anymore. This was a municipal cover-up. The thin blue line in Pineview apparently had a lucrative side hustle as Karen Whitaker's personal protection racket. That was it. The final straw. If the system was rigged from the inside, I'd just have to go outside. Way outside. My meticulously compiled dossier of Karen's crimes, now thicker than a cheesecake factory menu, was ready for its debut. I had it all. Crystal clear footage from the Buddha cam, showing not only my back door, but also some very interesting late-night cash handoffs near the donation box, when Karen thought no one was watching. Turns out, even Buddhas can be narcs if you aim them right. Copies of the voluntary contribution receipts unsigned, undated, and definitely not declared on any official HOA financial statement. Tax evasion. The name is Karen. The inflated invoices from Celestial Landscapes LLC, aka Chad Whitaker's big score, right alongside printouts of his non-existent contractor's license and comparative quotes from legitimate landscapers showing the obscene markups. Screenshots of Karen's gushing personal emails promoting her energy pond, while the official HOA channels remained silent. And the cherry on top, photos of Karen and her deputy sheriff brother, Mikey, looking chummy at HOA events, juxtaposed with the list of disappeared police complaints from other residents. Circumstantial, maybe. Damning as hell in the court of public opinion. Absolutely. I spent a whole afternoon crafting the perfect email, attaching my digital treasure trove of evidence, and sending it off to 2 recipients. A bulldog of a lawyer downtown known for taking on corrupt HOAs and winning, and the investigative reporting team at the biggest newspaper in the state capital. I hit send with a grim satisfaction that was far more spiritually fulfilling than any amount of enforced zen. The explosion was quicker and more spectacular than I could have hoped. Apparently, suburban HOA president runs alleged extortion racket and spiritual scam with possible police complicity is a headline that sells papers, or, in this digital age, generates clicks. The article, when it dropped a week later, was a thing of beauty. The headline screamed, Zen and the Art of the Shakedown. Pineview, HOA uses positive energy to silence residents, raise suspicious funds. It was brutal. It detailed the unpermitted construction, the hidden camera which they dubbed Buddha Gate, the exorbitant donations, the nepotistic contracts, and, most deliciously, the very convenient family ties between HOA President Karen Whitaker and Deputy Sheriff Mikey Whitaker. They even quoted Mr. Levin anonymously, of course about the Feng Shui realignment land grab. The fallout was immediate and glorious. My phone started ringing off the hook other Pineview residents, finally feeling brave enough to speak, sharing their own Karen horror stories with the reporter. The city council, suddenly very interested in the goings-on in our sleepy little cul-de-sac, announced an emergency session. The phrase full forensic audit of Pineview HOA finances was uttered by the mayor himself, his face a perfect mask of shocked political concern. I almost felt a flicker of sympathy for the guy. He clearly hadn't seen this coming. Karen went to ground. Her perfectly coiffed blonde head was nowhere to be seen. The community meditation zone was deserted. The wind chimes finally, blessedly silent. Even the smirking Buddha looked a little less smug. Almost apprehensive. Or maybe that was just me projecting. The investigation is ongoing, of course. These things take time. Lawyers are lawyering. Accountants are accounting. But for the first time in months, I could walk into my still partially fenced backyard and breathe without feeling like I was inhaling a toxic cloud of bureaucratic oppression and bad incense. The fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But the tide had turned. Karen Whitaker had wanted positive consent through silence. Instead, she'd gotten a full-throated roar of defiance, amplified by a printing press and the threat of legal action. She'd tried to build a spiritual oasis. What she'd really built was her own funeral pyre. And I, for one, was looking forward to roasting marshmallows. Metaphorically speaking, of course, mostly. The sound of Karen Whitaker's empire crumbling was far more melodious than any of those infernal wind chimes she'd inflicted upon us. The newspaper expose had opened the floodgates, and the subsequent city-led investigation had unearthed a veritable septic tank of corruption lurking beneath Pineview's placid suburban surface. It turned out my little backyard Budakam had just scratched the surface of Karen's malfeasance. The indictments, when they finally came down, were a thing of poetic justice. Karen Whitaker, president for life in her own mind, anyway, of the Pineview Homeowners Association, was charged with a glorious laundry list of offenses. It was like a greatest hits album of petty tyranny and white-collar crime. Trespassing on private property. That was my fence talking. Civil fraud. For all those voluntary contributions that were about as voluntary as a root canal. Misappropriation of association funds. Turns out, Chad Whitaker's Celestial Landscapes, LLC wasn't the only family business benefiting from Mama Karen's generosity with other people's money. There were consulting fees to her sister for aesthetic guidance and event planning charges from a cousin who mostly planned Tupperware parties. Illegal surveillance. The Buddha Cam. Oh, the sweet irony of a Zen master becoming a star police witness. Operating an unlicensed business. Those essential Zen accessories and Mystic Moonflower's 50 a head frequency activation circus apparently needed permits. Who knew? Obstruction of justice and abuse of influence. This one was for leveraging her brother, Deputy Sheriff Mikey, to make resident complaints magically disappear. Mikey, by the way, was enjoying a very extended, very unpaid vacation pending the outcome of his own internal affairs investigation. The Pineview HOA, that once feared monolith of beige paint enforcement and lawn height litigation, didn't just get a slap on the wrist. It got the corporate death penalty. The city, in a move that probably had other overzealous HOAs across the state frantically shredding documents, ordered its immediate dissolution. Its assets were frozen, and a court-appointed administrator was brought in to sort through the financial wreckage. The best part? Every last cent of those voluntary contributions for the Spiritual Oasis initiative had to be repaid, with interest. I practically danced a jig when I got my check. The dismantling of the community meditation zone was a public spectacle. A city crew, looking rather bemused, arrived with a small bulldozer and a couple of dump trucks. The smirking Buddha was unceremoniously forklifted onto a flatbed, looking decidedly less serene as he was strapped down like a common criminal. The bamboo was uprooted, the glaring white gravel scooped up, and the cheap solar lights tossed into a bin. Within a few hours, my backyard and the adjacent common area were blessedly, beautifully barren, just dirt. Glorious, unzenified dirt. The apologies started trickling in shortly after. Awkward little notes left in my mailbox. Mumbled sorries during chance encounters at the grocery store. Most were from residents who'd bought into Karen's vision, or had been too intimidated to question it. Brenda from 2 doors down, who had initially been one of Karen's staunchest supporters on the expanded council, actually baked me apology cookies. They were a little burnt, but I appreciated the sentiment. Even Mr. Levine, my petunia-loving neighbor, gave me a solemn nod of gratitude that spoke volumes. "You did what we were all too scared to do," he said, and for a moment, I felt like a genuine suburban superhero. My cape a slightly singed HOA warning letter. The Pineview Police Department, stung by the public outcry and the damning evidence of Deputy Mikey's interference, launched a very conspicuous internal affairs review into familial influences on departmental procedures. The police chief even issued a public statement about their commitment to impartial service, which everyone translated as, "We're really sorry we got caught letting Karen's brother bury complaints." It wasn't exactly a profile in courage, but it was a start. A few weeks later, once the last vestiges of the Zen zone had been hauled away and fresh sod was starting to take root where the pond had been, I took a small piece of reclaimed wood from my new fence project. I'm not much of a woodworker, but I managed to carve a few simple words into it. Then, I drove it into the ground, right in the center of where that ridiculous Buddha had held court on my property. The sign wasn't fancy. It didn't have any cheerful script or spiritual platitudes. It just said, "This used to be a meditation pond." I wasn't feeling very peaceful, And you know what? Standing there, in my reclaimed backyard, with the late afternoon sun on my face and the only sound being the distant hum of a lawnmower, a legally operated lawnmower, on someone else's property, I finally felt it. Real peace. The kind that doesn't come from a 4-foot ceramic statue or a mandatory $85 a month contribution. The kind that comes from standing your ground, speaking truth to power, even if that power is a tyrannical HOA president with bad taste in garden decor and a brother on the police force. The neighborhood is quieter now. People talk to each other more, no longer looking over their shoulders for Karen or her spies. We're even talking about forming a new neighborhood association, one with actual term limits, transparent finances, and absolutely no mention of communal aesthetic harmonics. My grass is growing back. A little patchy, but gloriously mine. And if anyone ever again suggests my yard needs more zen, I've got a beautifully sarcastic wooden sign and a very good lawyer. Ready to go. What did you think of today's story? If it made your day, drop a good in the comments. If it didn't hit the mark, just type 1. Got your own thoughts? I'd love to hear them below. And hey, don't forget to hit subscribe. It's free, and it really helps the channel grow. Thank you so much for being here.